Hello, I'm Jenny. Thanks so much for clicking on my video. So I took this photo of a Venice canal back in 2019, and today I want to share with you how I made this ink and watercolour drawing from my photo. I love working from my own photos as the outcome becomes much more personal and unique. So here are the materials I used to create a piece like this. Firstly, the ink. It must be permanent ink because I create a watercolour wash over the top at the end and I don't want it all to smudge. I like Indian ink the best because it's really dark black. I don't use anything fancy to dip in the ink, just a wooden stick with a point, and I draw with that. For this particular piece I have also used fine liner pens, and again, as long as they are permanent and you have a selection of nib sizes, then that's all you need. My favourite paper to use is this Bristol paper, which is so smooth and nice and thick. This one is 260 GSM, which refers to its weight per square metre. I think regular printing paper is around 75 GSM, so you can see that this is a lot thicker. Watercolour paper is also nice and thick, but often has a bumpy surface, which watercolour artists like for adding texture to their work. I like to use the smoothest paper I can find, as I think it's better for detailed ink work. I use a mechanical pencil because it stays consistently sharp without having to use a pencil sharpener all the time. I'm using this Pelican paint box, and I'm not too fussy about the paint which I use, as long as it can be watered down into a wash for the effect I want to achieve at the end. And a couple of brushes to apply the wash with. Lastly, I print the image I'm working with and use a ruler to identify the perspective lines. I've added them on top of the image here with a Sharpie pen so that it's nice and clear where my vanishing point is and the edges of the buildings are. This is my setup, near to a window with lots of light. So first step is to transfer the lines and shapes over to my A3 paper. I start by finding the main vanishing point, which is the point where the two lines of the buildings meet together in a V shape. It is slightly to the left of the middle. In this image there are actually two vanishing points, so I find the easiest way to discover this is to lay the ruler down over the lines, for example the tops and bottoms of the buildings and the tops and bottoms of the windows. This helps to see to which point they all lead. I make a dot on the paper once I've discovered it, and then I remember that all the building and window edges will be drawn leading into this point. When drawing buildings, it's important to draw all of the vertical lines completely straight, or it will look as if your buildings are leaning. Sometimes in the photo it appears that way because of the lens, but I always draw them completely vertical anyway. Once I've got the main shapes in, I go into detail. Things like window ledges, roofs, chimneys, door frames, patterns, and so on. And then I begin to outline with pen and fill in any dark areas with solid black. As I said before, Indian ink with the stick is great for this as it's such a dark black. Some black inks are not as opaque and they don't give the same dramatic contrast that Indian ink gives you. The best thing about using the wooden stick to dip into the ink is that you get a nice dark colour on the first deposit, and then as the wooden stick absorbs the ink, it becomes lighter and you can create a shading effect, the same as you would with a pencil. So as you can see here, I'm dipping into my ink pot and filling in all the areas I want black, and then as the ink runs out, I carry on applying this to the other areas to create a tonal, shaded effect. I try not to outline everything, as I don't want it to look too cartoony or animated. I make sure to leave some areas white as when I add the colour wash, you will see the colour more clearly through the blank spaces. Also, just to mention that I have taped my little wooden stick to a pencil so that it's easier to hold. Normally I use the longer barbecue sticks, but I didn't have any at the time. This is a close-up of the detail, so you can see I have transferred to using a fine liner pen for the really thin lines. The stick isn't very good at creating thin details. And here is a close-up of the gondola and the gondolier. I ended up filling this all in with pen, as I think it was a little more accurate, and as he is right in the middle of the piece, he is a focal point, so I wanted to make sure I didn't mess it up. You definitely get much more control with the pens, but it's harder to create that shading effect I mentioned before. And the last step is to add the colour wash. I use loads of water and just a dab of colour. It's better to go in really light with the colour wash and then add more intense colour if you want to darken it up after. Also, this technique works well to blend colours. For example, here I have used blues and greens for the water. I usually keep the colour scheme pretty simple, just 2-3 colours maximum. I also leave some areas white, for a bit of breathing space from everything else that's going on. And this is the final result. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.